Alright, so we're on to our 3-column notes for lesson 54, so that's part 2. First thing we need to do is put on our heading, our name, number, date, first and last in cursive. Put your numbers pi. You put your number, today's date. Remember to write the date that you're actually working on these notes, not necessarily the date I'm writing, but you do need to put a date. And this is math. Alright, so here we're using this model to compare the two decimals and justify. This is going to be our proof for our answer. So we have to look at 32 hundredths, so that's 3/10, that's 3 columns. And 2 hundredths, and then 4 hundredths. So which one is this? Is 32 hundredths greater than 4 hundredths? Less than 4 hundredths, or equal to? This is a much larger area shaded in. So 32 hundredths is greater than 4 hundredths. Here we need to use a number line to help us. So first we have to label the number line. We're going between 1 and 2. So we're going to start with 1 and 0/10, 1 and 1/10, 1 and 2/10, 1 and 3/10, 1 and 4/10, 1 and 5/10, 1 and 6/10, 1 and 7/10, 1 and 8/10, 1 and 9/10, and 2/10 or 2 whole. So this is right here. Here is 1 and 3/10. One and 13/10. There's no 13 on here. That's because it goes to the hundredths. So that's between 10 hundredths and 20 hundredths, or 1/10 and 2/10. So it's actually right about here. 1 and 13/10. You got to remember, when you're looking at 1 and 3/10 and 1 and 13 hundredths, when you line them up, it's easier to see. Our ones line up, our decimals line up, our tenths line up, and really, because we're missing a place, we can put a placeholder. Don't think of this as 13. It's 1 and 3/10, or 30 hundredths. This isn't 113. It's 1/10. I'm sorry, 1 and 13 hundredths. So looking at it, this one is farther to the left. I'm sorry, right. So it's greater. Also, if you look here, 3/10 is greater than 1/10. So 1 and 3/10 is greater than 1 and 13 hundredths. You can't just look at the numbers. You do need to line them up or look on a visual model to make sure. If you're making sure that they're both to hundredths, then you can look at just the numbers. So here, if you just look at the two, you might think, oh, they're the same. But they're not, because this is 2 hundredths, so 2 out of 100, and this is 2 tenths, so 2 rows. So you're looking at 2 hundredths and 2 tenths. Well, 2 tenths is the same as 20 hundredths. Line up your ones, your decimals, your tenths, and your hundredths, and it's easier to see. Now this first problem, we didn't actually need to line them up because they both went to the hundredths, but it's still a good idea to line up your ones, your tenths, and your hundredths to make it easier to see which one's greater. So 0 is less than 2. These 2 hundredths is definitely less than these 20 hundredths or these 2 tenths. So it's not a matter of just looking at the numbers. You have to look at where they are placed. It's not just the digit, it's the place value of that digit. Okay. So here we're going to use the number line again. We're going between 4 and 5. So we're going to put 4 and 0 tenths, 4 and 1 tenth, 4 and 2 tenths, 4 and 3 tenths, 4 and 4 tenths, 4 and 5 tenths, 4 and 6 tenths, 4 and 7 tenths, 4 and 8 tenths, 4 and 9 tenths, and then 5 tenths. So 4 and 9 hundredths, that is not the same as 4 and 9 tenths. That would actually be between 0 and 10. It'd be right about here. That's where 4 and 9 tenths is. I'm sorry, 9 hundredths. 4 and 7 tenths, that one is right here. This one's furthest to the right, so it is greater. Also, if you line them up, you line up the ones, those are the same. You line up the decimals, you line up the tenths, it becomes easier to see. And if you want to have the same amount of places, you could put a placeholder here. So 4 and 9 hundredths, or 4 and 9 cents, is less than 4 and 7 tenths, or 4 and 70 cents. That is what we need. We need to make sure we're comparing the same places. Don't think of this as 47 and 409. That is not the case. That decimal changes that. $4.09, $4.70. So 4 and 9 hundredths is less than 4 and 7 tenths. Alright, now it's time to practice more with comparing decimals. Thank you for joining me.